Chainsaw Man Chapter 195, things just went from hold your breath for another Fujimoto plot twist to Mitaka's agony just makes you want to go into a corner and bawl your eyes out as you watch her suffering as much as she's been throughout these last two chapters, to leaving you with another cliffhanger ending that's making your mind racing because the new devil that we see can only be one of two characters, both of which are horsewomen. However, let's back things up and let's do a proper unpacking of the chapter itself because we have a lot to go through with this one. So we open up chapter 195 where the last one left off, with Mitaka continuing to point at Denji with her finger, and her hands are shaking as she does so, but not because she is contemplating killing Denji. Instead, she is mentally preparing herself to take her own life by pointing her finger at her own head suddenly, but when it looks like she's finally about to do it, she breaks down and is unable to continue to go through with it, shouting that she is scared, and Denji immediately tells her to stop pointing her finger at him, which totally makes sense given how Mitaka's emotions are all over the place right now. She's anxious, she's scared, and most importantly, she is desperate, which is that last emotion that is the most troublesome one and the one we have to focus on for a moment. So she's fighting two really big battles at the same time. She's fighting to suppress Yoru from taking over again, and she is fighting with herself, in particular the guilt that she feels for all the lies that she has taken and her own fear of dying, but she's unable to kill herself, which is why she has now begun to beg Denji to just kill her instead. She tries to give Denji an ultimatum, saying either he kills her or Mitaka will kill him, but it's not in the way that it seems at first. Your first reaction is to think, oh shoot, here we go again. This is another crazy woman Denji's dealing with, and Denji probably thought the same thing as well. You want to believe that Mitaka is threatening to kill him on the spot if she doesn't die at his own hands, but that's not the case at all. Instead, she is warning Denji that if Mitaka does not die right now, then everything will change because Yoru has a plan that makes the arrival of the Death Devil, which is supposed to be this world-ending event. Yoru's plan, it makes everything that is coming with the Death Devil look like it is child's play, which it is very scary. Fujimoto does a really good job at building up the tension right here to make you rethink how to approach Yoru's character and start viewing her as something even scarier than the Death Devil itself. He lays it on really thick here by saying that what Yoru wants is something that goes beyond the Death Devil, bringing about extinction of all humans as we know. And we know that Mitaka is telling the truth because their thoughts, they are shared here. Whatever Mitaka thinks, Yoru has access to, and vice versa. And Mitaka, she is spooked. That connection's gotten even stronger. For a time, it looked like it was only one way. Yoru was able to read Mitaka as an open book, but now Mitaka can do the same with Yoru. This makes your view of her desperation something you have to look at from a different perspective. Because what do we know about Mitaka's character? Even though she started out the series a bit jaded, we saw signs as far back as the first chapter where she's walking around and she's basically a heart that needed to be filled with love. And she looked as if she was beginning to heal for a moment with the encounters of people like Yuko and Denji when he was Chainsaw Man. She still values life, and it's because of the trauma that she went through that it makes you wonder if Yoru is planning something like a state of eternal war, which would basically be worse than death itself due to the violence and the pain that it would inflict, which in turn would make Yoru extremely powerful in the process due to the renewed fear of war itself. Mitaka continues to beg Denji to kill her, saying that she was a fool to think she could be friends with a devil like Yoru, and this is where your heart starts to go out to Mitaka. We knew from the very start that the story was alluding to the possibility of Yoru and Mitaka's relationship being a cruel inverse of Pochita and Denji. Whereas Pochita and Denji have a sincere friendship, Yoru and Mitaka have one that is at the point right now where you could potentially say it is parasitic in nature. The way Denji says so easily that he believes Yoru and Mitaka could be friends just goes to show how lucky he was to make friends with Pochita, because devils at their core, they hate humans, and based on what we've seen, Yoru gets off on the suffering of humans, and for a soul like Mitaka, living with something like that, it is a fate worse than death in a lot of ways, especially because she is powerless to stop it, and Denji finally sees it after looking into her eyes. Without hesitation, Denji just grabs the chair and he swings it at Mitaka with the intention of killing her, which leads to Mitaka to cry out murderer, and Denji, in the most Denji way possible, says, but you told me to kill you, and this leads to one of the most human moments ever in Chainsman Part 2. The whole reason why Denji did what he did this quickly was to give Mitaka a mercy kill, and when you consider how many lives that Denji's lost over the years, it makes complete sense, and this is one of the rare moments where we still see Denji giving wisdom that is way beyond his years. He says that nobody is ever truly prepared to die, not even a devil-human hybrid like him, who can come back to life after dying, and he says that for someone like Mitaka, it's even worse because she only gets to live life once. When it's over, there's no going back from it. Without using any words, Fujimoto uses the next set of panels to show Mitaka crumbling to the ground as the gravity of her words hits her, and she goes through several mental stages of decline. In only a few moments, and Denji sits down on the ground next to her, and this moment makes the entire scene for me personally. Denji once saved Mitaka as Chainsaw Man. Now he's doing it as plain old Denji. In part 1, he asks, how come nobody wants my Denji heart? And we're seeing someone who wants his Denji heart. Both times, when Mitaka is ready to give up, it was Denji being himself who saved her in each of those instances. It is a brilliant explanation on death and suicide in general. It's a great build-up to the eventual reveal of the Death Devil. As Denji said, no one is ever truly ready to die, regardless of how much they prepare for it, which is a big reason why the death of someone, including yourself, is as feared as it is. Yet it's because of that fear of the unknown for what happens after death that someone like Mitaka, who is seemingly ready to end it all, she's now searching for a reason to cling to her life. And the confusion and the grief that is making her shut down, yet it is Denji who is serving as the anchor that keeps her in place, keeping her from going over the edge, despite Denji being someone who is broken himself. And that's the beauty of this scene, and it makes you realize that had these two met before under different circumstances, under different conditions, there might have been a happier story for the two of them than the one that they're forced to participate in now, where a happy ending doesn't seem as likely. After Mitaka expresses her guilt for all the terrible things that were done, the lives killed that came from Yoru controlling her body, Denji promises to help Mitaka talk through all those moments after he kills the Death Devil, and he tells her for now they should just focus on Mitaka shooting the buildings in front of her to take her mind off the trauma that she is feeling. It's a humanizing moment for their entire interaction, one that makes you shift from feeling pity for Mitaka to breathing a sigh of relief. The same way that Denji was able to look at a set of boobs after Aki and Power died and everything with Makima happened, and he threw himself into basically being a sex addict to deal with the trauma. He's telling Mitaka to find something that can bring her joy and take her mind off of it, and he's offering those buildings as a way to do it. But like with any Chainsman chapter, that sigh of relief, it turns into a total WTF moment before you even realize what happened. When we see the school club getting ready for the Prayer for Tokyo Festival, we see a new student being introduced, a transfer student who just happened to come right when all this chaos, death, and destruction was going on, and a new girl introduces herself as a transfer student to everyone, but for as innocent and socially anxious as she might look, the eyes, they are a giveaway here that she isn't what she appears to be. She has the same ringed eyes that we saw Makima, Fami, Yoru, and Nayuta have, which means she's either the Death Devil arriving a month earlier than expected, or she is the reborn Control Devil. Either way, it is a total mindfuck to wrap your head around, and it is a nasty cliffhanger to leave the chapter on. In terms of this chapter, Mitaka is definitely one who came out with the most development here. The fact that her own fear of death and her grief has overwhelmed her to this point where she feels empty and helpless and trapped. It's a great character building moment as we march towards the Death Devil, and it is a perfect thing to show how the Death Devil can regain power and gain more power. Because the fear of death is a fear on multiple things all at once that only serves to make the Death Devil even stronger, and we see several of these things on display with Mitaka here. The other thing this chapter did is it allowed us to go through the resolve of someone like Mitaka as all this is going on. She opened up, determined to kill herself and wanting to make amends for the misdeeds that have been carried out using her body, something that is honorable on a surface level, but it's a coward's way out. But the true honor comes from living and trying to make amends. Yet Mitaka is a teenage girl, a child, and her emotions, they're all over the place, which makes the whole situation relatable when you think about what it is that this does for her, because she's reacting in a way that most people would do, which is to say she is freaking out and she is emotionally all over the place. She's trying to do the impossible, which is find meaning into suffering and cope with everything that has happened, which is why someone like Denji is the right one to be there to help her restore the balance to the situation. They play off of each other very well. Denji is someone who has been associated with all the chaotic moments of part 1 of Chainsaw Man and part 2, whereas Mitaka has been the one associated with all the slower moments of part 2 of Chainsaw Man, and it fits their personalities brilliantly. One does best in a whirlwind of chaos, and the other one does best in stillness. One is easygoing, the other is a serial overthinker, and this chapter, it has each of them pushed to do the opposite of what they're used to. Denji has to stay in the moment instead of moving on to the next thing. Staying in the moment means he has to help Mitaka deal with her grief and her urges right now in the now, while Mitaka has to learn to go with the flow, which means doing something that she would consider to be chaotic based on her personality, which is shooting the buildings for fun, even though there's no real reason for her to want to do that. She just has to go along with it. They each have been forced to step out of their comfort zones to a different extent, and it is very beautiful writing. While that's going to be it for this Chainsaw Man chapter, thankfully the next chapter is only a week away, so we don't have to wait long to see what happens next. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and checking out more videos from Anime Explained.